Russia says it has high expectations for President Vladimir Putin's visit to China this week as Moscow and Beijing move to deepen what the Kremlin calls their privileged partnership. Putin arrives in China on Tuesday, less than a week after US President Donald Trump met Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. August Hawkinson takes a look at what's at stake.
For China, it's a diplomatic spotlight. Last week, a visit from the US president. This week, Russia's leader arrives in Beijing. Chinese state media says it's proof of China becoming a focal point of global diplomacy. Russia says their meeting comes at a crucial moment.
We have very high expectations. In addition to the trade and economic cooperation, we're actively developing our dialogue in the fields of education.
It's a partnership both sides described as particularly privileged and strategic. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, ties between Moscow and Beijing have grown dramatically stronger.
I'm certain that Russian-Chinese cooperation has truly limitless potential and prospects.
While the West hit Russia with sanctions, China has become one of Moscow's most important economic lifelines. One major topic during Putin's visit could be the proposed Power of Siberia gas pipeline that would send more Russian Arctic gas into China. China is today buying more than 1/4 of Russia's export. Beijing has bought more than 300 billion euros worth of Russian fossil fuels, money that has helped Moscow continue its war in Ukraine. But Ukraine barely appeared on the agenda during Donald Trump's talks with Xi Jinping last week. Instead, much of the focus appeared to center on Taiwan. Analysts say Taiwan could also loom over this week's summit. Deeper energy ties with Moscow would help secure China's fuel supplies in the event of a future conflict over the island.
And for more on this visit to China by Russian President Vladimir Putin, I can welcome Aleksei Chigadaev, Associate Research Fellow at the new Eurasian Strategies Centre in Berlin, and he is a specialist in Sino-Russian relations. Good morning, Aleksei, and thank you very much for joining us today. Can I start by asking you if there's any significance in this visit taking place so soon after Donald Trump's trip to Beijing?
Thank you so much for having me. And as far as we understand, and Mr. Ushakov, who is the head of administration of Vladimir Putin, told us repeatedly that the visit of Mr. Putin does not have any connection with the visit of Trump. And yeah, he is absolutely right, because this very visit was scheduled the last year, and we already knew that Vladimir Putin will visit China this May. And it's not that something extraordinary in this visit, because right now it's the normal practice for the Russian president to go China every year, because it's kind of the legitimacy from outside. Because it's always great to have a photo with Mr. Xi Jinping and to shake the hands, to make the video, to make the press releases. Because right now, of course, we are not talking about the isolation of Russia anymore, but still, Vladimir Putin still needs this kind of legitimacy from the outside.
Now, what are likely to be the main areas of discussion in the talks between the two men in Beijing?
From what we see right now, it's quite humanitarian. So the first big issue here is the cross years of education. So we see that Russia and China will sign a lot of papers regarding the education, the universities cooperation, and so on and so forth. The next big topic, the next topic is the Power of Siberia too, but it's not, I think, in the list, but still the two sides have to say something about that. And the next thing here is also quite, let's say, humanitarian, quite diplomatic one. Russia and China have to re-sign the Treaty of Neighborliness, which is already 25 years old. And I have to remember you that 25 years ago, Mr. Putin signed this Treaty of Neighborliness. And after 25 years, Vladimir Putin is still the president and still will sign this treaty again.
Now, that relationship was sort of solidified more than 4 years ago when Xi Jinping welcomed Vladimir Putin to the Beijing Olympics. He hailed a limitless friendship between the two countries, and that was just a few weeks before Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. How has the relationship between Moscow and Beijing fared since then?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say, and I have to admit that the Chinese side was also shocked by the full-scale invasion of Vladimir Putin to Ukraine. And I think that they were not prepared for this. But at the same time, right now, what they see right now is the economic interdependence. Because right now they see Russia as a major supplier of oil and gas with discount, I should say. And at the same time, right now, Russia sanctioned and isolated from the world. So you can sell to Russia whatever you want, and Russia will buy that because Russia simply doesn't have any other alternatives. So Russia cannot sell something directly to Europe or buy something from Europe. At the same time, the same situation with the US and any other countries which supported the sanctions. So for China, this interdependency is pretty suitable, let's say, and it's pretty effective because this interdependence becomes stronger and stronger with every day. And yeah, right now Russia is trying to find the ways to make it a little bit less, but still it's kind of big problem for Vladimir Putin because, yeah, your only friend right now is Mr. Xi.
Now, you mentioned there the interdependency, and Vladimir Putin was very upbeat ahead of this visit. And the relationship with China is clearly important to Moscow. You mentioned its importance to Beijing as well. But is China as enthusiastic about the relationship as Russia is?
No, I don't think so. And what we see right now is all the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was trying to prepare the meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, and Russia was, let's say, on the second line because, we have to say a few words about Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is the authoritarian leader. So what he's doing, like for the 90% of his day, he's thinking about the country. He's thinking about China because China is unstable. China, yeah, it's a pretty difficult country to manage it because, I mean, it's just huge. So 90% of your daytime, you're thinking about China, about the domestic policy. Then the next thought is the US, the trade war with US, because still China and the US are the two interconnected economies, and you have to manage this process by yourself. And that's what President Trump also doing right now. He has envoys to the Middle East, he has envoys to Russia, to Ukraine, but seems like China is the pretty private deal of Mr. Donald Trump here. And at the same time, and after that, Xi Jinping is looking all around and he's thinking about the foreign policy. And Russia is not priority number one because, yeah, he still got so much to do. And what we see is, Russian president will bring all the ministries, all the head of the banks, Russian banks, and he's trying to push this connection. He's trying to push the negotiations with Chinese colleagues. But still, I see it's not so much to discuss there because Chinese authorities are much more busy with the domestic policy, with the US, and what's time left, they can manage Russia and the Russian things.
Now, at the moment, at a time of isolation for Russia, this relationship with Beijing is a bit of a lifeline. But looking further into the future, perhaps when the war in Ukraine is over, is there any concern in Russia, and it's probably only expressed privately, about the country ultimately becoming overly dependent on China? That's all the Russian business is thinking about, because Russian business, Russian authorities, they are
you do feel this feeling of distrust in Russian authorities and Russian government, in Russian business. They do want to trade with the US, the European Union, with any other countries, because they already got that business before. So they got their logistic routes before, they got their business partners before in Europe, in US, and so on and so forth. So what we are seeing right now is kind of this it's not natural, let's say, for the business from, for example, in central Russia, in western Russia, to make deal with China. So yeah, they quite conscious about that. They quite suspicious of Chinese business, and we still don't see any big projects. We still don't see any kind of investment to the Russian economy which will benefit Russia. Yeah, we still see some investment to the oil infrastructure, to the gas infrastructure, to logistic on the border between China and Russia, but it all benefits China because China wants to sell more and want to buy more oil and gas and natural sources. We still don't see any kind of industrial cooperation. We still don't see any kind of IT startups, for example, or AI startups. So yeah, Russian business is ready to return to any country, but not China right now.
Thank you very much for that, Aleksei Chigadaev, Associate Research Fellow at the New Eurasian Strategies Centre in Berlin.